All right. So we got a 2008 Kia Optima, 2.4 liter automatic transmission, and we found the solenoid that wasn't working. This guy right here, this clip, you can pry it off with a flathead screwdriver or whatever it is you can get in there. So they do just pull right off. I wasn't for sure on that, but they just pop right off, just like a set of old speakers. You do have to take out the battery box, the battery plate, and then there's an L bracket underneath that plate that also needs to come off. Just for accessibility, it makes it a lot easier. Take out the tube from the intake box to the intake of the motor. That'll help you out. And then you get the 15 bolts on the outside of the plate, or the pan that goes over the solenoids. So, this is what we're looking at. Oh, let's see if we can get light here. So that plate, that L bracket goes right there. I also had to remove, trying to do two things at once here. I had to remove these transmission lines. Those are an 18 millimeter. I had to remove the selector switch here. And that made it quite a bit easier to get in there. And then I didn't really disconnect anything else. All that stuff down there is right where it was. I did remove that bolt right there. That one. I removed that so I can get to that other transmission line. But everything else was pretty easy. I did have to remove the splash guard underneath, again for accessibility, to be able to get to some of these bolts from underneath. Right now I'm just waiting on this gasket sealer to seal up and kind of cure before I crank it down and get it torqued. And then I removed the two wires from the fuse box. They're over here, again for accessibility, and get that stuff out of the way. So once this stuff cures, I'm going to go ahead and tighten down all the bolts all the way around. I don't want to have to do this again because it's leaking. I'm going to do it right the first time. This is RVT silicone from the factory. They use the red. I'm using the black just because it's for high heat and maximum oil resistance. So it's not what the factory used. That's what I'm using because I believe it works better than the red stuff. I did also have to remove the beauty cover for the engine just to get to the intake tubing and get that out of the way. I'm 3 hours into this job. So 3 hours. So this is probably going to be a 3.5, 4 hour job total for someone who's experienced and has the tools. If you're not experienced and you don't have the tools, probably plan on 6 to 8. If you decide you're going to crack a cold one, well, it might be quite a bit longer than that. Depending on how experienced you are. This is not a hard job. It's pretty simple. Almost anyone can do this, I'm willing to bet. Now here's the thing. If this does not fix the solenoid, so I went through the computer and actuated all the solenoids, and this is the one that wasn't working, so we've replaced it. My only concern is that it's not actually the solenoid, and it's actually the computer itself not doing what it's supposed to be doing. I've already told the client about that. So if this isn't it, we'll start looking at the transmission control module. But hopefully it's just really dirty transmission fluid and a bad module. The fluid in this was black. There was no red color left to it. There wasn't an excessive amount of fluid, or not fluid, but metal on the magnet. This is a magnetized plug. That's a 24 millimeter. The rest you'll run into is 14, 10 millimeter, 8 millimeter, and that's pretty much it. You'll need a Phillips for the pop clips for the pan, but the rest is 10, 14, 8, and a 18 or 19, one of the two, for those transmission lines. A majority of this job is 10 millimeter. So for those of you wondering why there's all these 10 millimeter memes, a majority of the stuff on these vehicles is 10 millimeter. That, and people don't put their 10 millimeters back where they belong when they're not using them. So they end up in the engine compartment somewhere, and that's usually the noise you hear when you go for that test drive. Something falls out and you're like, shit, there goes my 10 millimeter. So I bet the highway guys find a lot of 10 millimeters because that's where they end up. Or they end up in the pan underneath the motor in a spot where they don't fall out, and then the guy who ends up pulling the motor out of that car finds that 10 millimeter that someone else lost. This has been not a hard job at all. I mean, if you've never done something like this, I would label where everything went. I've been doing this so long, I don't label anything. I put all my nuts and bolts in a pile because I know where they all go. So yeah, like I said, this will be about a 4-hour job. Don't forget to make your fluids full. I'm not sure on this vehicle. Most vehicles you have to get the transmission hot to make sure it's filled. I emptied about a gallon of fluid out of this. That's what I'm going to put back into it. And then we should be able to slap it all back together and take it for a drive and make sure it's good. So, and if it's not, and the engine light comes back on, then we know we're not chasing down a solenoid. But the solenoid is good, and we'll start having to look at wiring and or the transmission control module and find out if that's working properly. So I hope this video helped you. If you're like me, I like to know what I'm getting into before I get into it, because everyone makes their vehicles differently. Even between Kia and what's the other brand? Hyundai. They have figured out that if they don't make their vehicles the same exactly, then they can charge more money. So a lot of the parts are not interchangeable on purpose. But everyone makes their things differently, and I work on all makes and all models. So for myself, I go through, I watch videos before I get into something. That way I'm not breaking something. I will rely on someone else to break something and then tell me how to not break it. So, just like the rest of us mechanics, out here doing the job no one else wants to do. Have a good day.